If there's something I've dreaded all my life, it is being laughed at by whoever finds something laughable on or about me. Growing up as a child, I was timid, tall, fat, and had bigger cheeks than most of my peers. I know that people I met at high school or university may struggle to imagine the person I am describing here. I look 2 or 3 years older than my chronological age, so that at age 4 I started joining older boys who were tending cattle in our village and ended up going to school earlier than I should have. On most days, I would wear a black blazer when going to school, put my hands in the pockets and run behind my older sister and cousins on our way to school. For some reason, I would fall on a tarred road and hurt my knees almost every morning and became the laughing stock after my mother's helper had stopped accompanying us to school. The main thing that made people laugh was seeing me rolling on the ground, trying to take my hands out of my pockets to stand on my feet. If I'm not mistaken, I think that is when I started dreading being laughed at by those around me, because they would keep laughing even when I cried with my knees bleeding. When I thought this mean life was over, as I was adjusting and getting used to walking to school with other children, people started giving me names that I did not like. The thing I never understood was that sometimes I would get a name from somebody whom I didn't even know. One day, while we were walking to school, we met a group of senior boys who were going to another school, and one of them called me Chakucha and Skumfefe. To this day, I do not know the meaning of the former name, but the latter one meant something fat and out of shape. Whenever these names were mentioned, I would get angry and even cry sometimes, in the hope that they would stop, not knowing that I was actually dancing to their music. I did not know that reacting to people's nasty comments about you makes them happy. In 1994, I became ill and was admitted in hospital for an illness I did not understand. I was feeling weak and faint without any pain in my body. When I came out of the hospital, my body did not go back to its original size. So I was a little skinnier, although my cheeks were still very visible. By this time, I had also coined a few nasty names for other children, although this did not numb the pain I was feeling when they called me Skumfemfe. When this name became less effective, I was teased about the shape of my head that people said looks like that of a hammercop bird. Others called me Istititi or Istingting, the timid one, because of my timidity level that was at its peak during this time. It felt as though people could easily find something negative to say about my behavior or any part of my body they could see. Probably people realized that I took everything they said personally and thus called me any name that would get me agitated. My unique body features proved to be a disastrous combo for someone who wanted to live in harmony with people and interact with anyone he wished to in the community. As the maturation process unfolded in my life, I started noticing that it was not everybody that would be generally picked on by most of the children. It was just a selected few who had something that looked a little different from the rest of the children. Some of the things that attracted ridicule from other children could be the shape or size of the eyes and head, height, which can be too tall or short, weight, that can be too big or skinny, different disabilities, and similar things. Although I have not done any research on this topic, except through my own life experience, I think the traumas resulting from these experiences are some of the factors causing us to have a great fear of being different or trying different things in life. I remember that in my teen years, I worked hard in trying to mask instead of embracing my imperfections. I'm not trying to encourage us to not work on improving the improvable in our lives, but there are things like having a hammercop-like head that you cannot do much about, besides hiding it in an afro hairstyle or hat that you probably do not even like wearing. There was a time between 2003 and 2005 when I would use my jaws to grab the flesh inside my cheeks, as though I was pouting to try and reduce the size when taking a picture. I started doing this after analyzing one of the pictures I had taken at school during a prize giving. I started doing this after analyzing one of the pictures I had taken at school during a prize giving day. I noticed that my cheeks were still big, even though my body had become quite small. During my tenure as a praise and worship team and choir member at SCF on campus, I was continuously reminded by our pictures taken when we were on stage that I am too tall. I know this might sound too trivial to even talk about, but it added to a long list of negative things that had been used to pick on me during my childhood. To some degree, I felt as though I was an inconvenience, as most people struggle to share the backing microphone with me because of my height. At some point, I started buying low-sole shoes in fear of being laughed at that I did not like, just to blend in with the rest of the team, although this approach did not help because I remained the tallest. After my first graduation, I joined the worship team of the local church and still suffered the same problem. Even when there was no one making comments about my height, as a result, I carried on wearing my somewhat flat shoes, forgetting that I was sacrificing my being to accommodate other people who probably did not even notice what I was doing. It was only in my late 20s that I started embracing and loving my features that evoked discomfort in people who feel that they do not submit to societal standards. This move opened a new world that I did not know existed. I began talking about being tall as an advantage rather than an impediment. Oddly enough, I was told that I was full of myself. I was probably overdoing it anyway. But who cares? The experience taught me that we will never be just right for other people. There will always be something that looks wrong, which other people will make sure, no matter how trivial it is, to add enough weight so that it pulls one down to where the majority resides. Hence, I think you have to embrace the fact that people, probably myself included, will always laugh at you when you try to express yourself in a way that is not in line with societal standards. I strongly believe that the trauma of being laughed at by our peers has kept most of us in bondage, even beyond our teen years and tertiary life. I have seen many of us choosing careers we have no interest in because of fear of losing relationship with friends, family, or parents. This fear had its roots deep into my life, to the point that it was difficult to make any significant decision without it raising its head to remind me that I would fail and people would laugh at me. The thing I've learned is to feel fear, accept the possibility of being laughed at, and carry on with what I want to do. This attitude has helped me to do a lot of things in my life. When I was doing grade 10 in 2003, I decided to go and search for gardening work in the suburbs of Mandeni town because of the high level of lack that we were experiencing at home. On a Friday afternoon, I asked my mother for 7 Rand, which was just enough to cover the transport cost to Mandeni and back home, in case I did not find any job. On the following day, I woke up early in the morning without telling my friends and traveled to look for a job. After knocking on a couple of gates, somebody opened the gate and gave me a hand slasher to cut the grass. I worked for this family as a gardener twice a month, earning 15 Rand a day, which was later raised to 20. The problem I had was that the house of this family was close to the road that some of my schoolmates used when going for extra classes for science subjects. Their classes were on Saturdays at the Technical and Vocational Education and Training College called Umfolozi. I knew that I was going to be a laughing stock at school should I be seen cleaning at the people's gardens on weekends. So I would hide behind the house whenever I heard students walking up the streets in the afternoon. Another boy from our village, who later learned that I was working as a gardener on weekends, laughed at me saying I was collecting dog poop. That would hit on my self-esteem, since it was true to a certain extent, but it was not strong enough to stop me from what I was doing. This boy lived with his siblings and both parents, to whom he could cry whenever he needed financial support. In my case, I was living with some of my siblings while others were in different places, and my mother was working in another town and spending only one weekend a month with us. This was more about survival for me, so I kept on knocking on other houses and asking if they did not need a gardener. I got more jobs, and I started placing some of my peers who were showing interest in gardening. What I thought was interesting is that some of them followed me. When they were done laughing because of the results that were obvious in my life, I had started having money at school and buying myself nicer clothes. I stopped wearing old clothes that were passed down to us by the people that my mother was working for. Here I decided to do what I wanted to do without asking for permission or company from other people, because I knew that they could talk me out of the idea I had. I know that this might sound insignificant to sophisticated people, but it has contributed immensely to the way that I now make decisions in life. This has built my confidence because I learned that people do not mock you because you are misfiring. They laugh mainly because of their inability to comprehend the decision you have made.
But if you keep going, you create the trail that will guide your laugher to the life they probably would have never even dreamt of without your action.
I'm not trying to sound invincible here. I have made hundreds of thousands more wrong decisions than right ones in my life, but I now refuse to let the fear of making wrong decisions impede the plans I have for the future.
Although fear continues to whisper in my ear about possible failures and you laugher.
While I was still on probation in the first semester of my second level of study at the university, I dreamt of myself somehow contributing to the research output of the university.
This dream came during the day while we were attending an agromat lecture.
And it was so strong and real in my mind that I decided to share with one of my fellow students. The guy burst out laughing at what I was saying. To be honest, I also did not really understand what I was saying. It just came out of my mouth, exactly the way it came into my mind. I probably would have done the same if someone who was still struggling to survive exclusion was talking about making a meaningful research contribution at a university like UKZN. A few minutes after sharing what seemed to be an inconceivable dream, the same guy saw me playing with calculators during the lecture and mocked me, asking if I had started doing the research I was talking about, and continued to laugh. The way he laughed made me regret telling him what was on my mind. After that, I forgot about the whole thing and focused on my studies. These thoughts disappeared for about a decade and came back when I was busy publishing work for my PhD research project in the same university.
The excitement I had when my second scientific paper got accepted in a high impact factor international journal in 2016 was not explainable.
I was experiencing a dream that came while I was in class, still fighting to survive at the university.
I've now managed to publish a couple of scientific papers that have UKZN affiliations, as I imagined when the dream was deposited.
All I'm saying is that we should not be afraid to dream with our eyes open and to ignore those who laugh at our inconceivable dreams, because their job is to make our victories sweeter. These experiences have helped me to have very few expectations for positive feedback from other people when I'm sharing my dream. And I do not blame other people for being unable to see what I see, because the dream was not given to them anyway, and they do not have to see it the way I see it. This does not mean I do not appreciate a little encouragement, but if it does not come, I do not worry anymore. I now know that most of the time, it might not be easy to believe that it's possible for someone born in obscurity to achieve whatever they dream about.